you're not going to end up in it. I mean, you didn't see any CFP, playoff team that got waxed yesterday, like Notre Dame against Georgia. You didn't see anybody get a participate. Oh, here's your trophy just for attending. It doesn't work that way. And I think that this whole Saquon Barkley not running in this game and not trying to break Eric Dickerson's record, I don't know. I mean, this is a meaningless game for them. Well, not for them, but for the opposing team. And it could be meaningless for Saquon in regards to health, in regards to what he expects to do in postseason play. So I'm not necessarily a fan of the sit out, only because the asterisk will be next to his name if he happens to play and break Eric Dickerson's title, because Eric Dickerson did it in less games than Saquon Barkley. And
yeah, but OJ did it in less games than him. So like
that brings in the asterisk.
Plus, if you look at it really, if he were, say he breaks it, he needs 101 yards to break it. He has 35 less carries. So sure, maybe he has an extra game. They wouldn't hand him the ball 35 times in this game. Like they just wouldn't do it. So even if he had an extra game, he would have done it in less carries.
True. And then you look at the opposite side of that spectrum of Saquon Barkley trolling the Giants in a Unisom ad, which I thought was freaking hilarious. You guys need to check that out. I'll send you the link over so you can look at it. But it's just funny how Saquon took this position. He's literally running with it. Probably the most prolific runner we have seen behind a very good offensive line, behind a very good offensive system there in Philadelphia. I can't say I'm giving credit to Nick Sirianni because I'm not. I'm giving it to the defensive coordinator. I'm giving it to Saquon. I'm giving it to the guys. That offensive line has been nothing but stout, and it's been getting better as the season has gone on. So to allow Saquon Barkley through opening those A gaps and allowing him to run like right through, and maybe a double team on that team's best pass rusher, allowing him to get those yards after, carry, and it's just nuts. It's just absolutely nuts. So, I mean, again, I'm not going to, smack Saquon Barkley, you bad Saquon. No, he's going to get his runs. And if for some reason it's not going to be in this game, then let it run in postseason play. So he's not going to win the rushing title. Who cares?
Well, he'll win the rushing title.
I'm sorry?
He'll win the rushing title this year. He's just not going to get the all-time record. But the biggest thing is this game doesn't matter, right? No. So when you're the team, are you looking at, let's get him the record and risk potentially getting hurt? Or do you save him, give him the week off because you don't have the number 1 overall seed, and save him for the playoffs because your ultimate goal is to get a ring, right? Like individual records, that's fantastic, especially in a season where you don't have a shot, right? Like if he was doing this with the Giants and they were not going to make the playoffs, you go get that record. But in a situation where he has had some injuries throughout his career, you have an opportunity to let him sit and rest before you go on a 4-game quest to get a ring. I mean, I don't hate him for not doing it. I would have respected if he was like, no, I want to play. I want this record. But if you saw earlier in the year, he had an opportunity to get a personal best in a game and was like, nah, let the young guys eat. I don't need to set my personal best record. So records clearly don't mean as much to him as they do to us in the media. He wants to win games.
Sure. And he very well should. Now, look at it like this. Players who get rest predominantly will end up, at least in the NFL. The NCAA clearly didn't phase teams like Notre Dame. It obviously phased Georgia in a very, very big way. But again, that's your contrast, because you have a Georgia team that had tons of time to rest. You get Stockton in there doing his thing. He's now first starting quarterback ever to play in the CFP, at least at level 2. So now a situation exists where you're playing against a team that's been battle tested, road tested. That game between them and Penn State is going to be knockdown, drag out, punch your face in kind of game, which is more than what I can say for Georgia from the offensive standpoint. But from a defensive standpoint, that Georgia defense played lights out. They just missed opportunities down the field in the secondary. But this is a team sport. So does an individual rest, and this is like the biggest question of all, does individual rest affect the rest of the team? It does. and it affects the individual player as well. Does it reflect on the decision-making process to win a rushing title, and shame on everybody else for saying, you know what, no, Saquon, don't do this? No, it doesn't. It's indicative of, does rest hurt him or will rest help him? That's the biggest question, especially headed into this weekend.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I was thinking all along that there'd be no chance that he would play because, as you guys said, the ring is the goal. And I heard a question on a radio show that kind of was perplexing to me. Like, it made no sense. Like, the question was, like, as a child and growing up in sports, wasn't it your goal to win, to achieve something that, was the most rushing yards ever, or the best field goal percentage, or the best goalie in the history of the game? Well, maybe in baseball, you did have that. Like, I'm going to win the home run title. That's my dream as a 10-year-old, right? But I think in football, it was always such a team sport that it almost seems selfish that you would want to go for a personal record, even if it includes the offensive line. They can take part in that too, right?
Yeah, but so think about it as a kid, though. When you were a kid in your backyard or at the park or whatever, you're standing there at the plate, and the scenario you have in your mind isn't, let me set the home run record or whatever individual title.
Good point.
The scenario you played in your head every time is you're like, full count, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, World Series. This is for the win. Like, that's the scenario as a kid you put in your head. It's never like, oh, I want to hit 65 home runs this year. Like, that's never even a thought when you're a kid.
Right. And I guess I might have said it wrong because I was thinking that was what I was trying to communicate, that it not a dream of Barkley's that he was going to set the all-time single season rushing title.
So in fact, since we're talking about it, because I actually had this queued up for my show later today, is there's a quote here from Barkley. He said, when I slept on it, I was like, this is an opportunity to implement my name in football history. You may never get an opportunity like this again, so I'm down. But I don't care about it. If I'm putting the team at risk, he's the head coach for a reason. He makes the decisions, and whatever the decision he wanted to make. If he wanted me to play, I'm going to go out there and make sure I get it. If we don't, I was okay with that too. So, like, he was either way. Well, the biggest thing is it really shows earlier in the season when he was like, hey, I don't need to set this personal best, right? Like, let these young guys get out there, and it doesn't matter to me. And so I think maybe he is built a little bit different than a lot of us, where you're like, man, I'm within 100 yards. I've been tearing off 150 yards a game. I could probably have this sewn up by halftime. Like, would I have wanted to go get it? I mean, probably. But if your coach was like, no, we need to save you for the playoffs, I think at the same time, you're like, well, I mean, I'm still the 9th player to ever hit 2,000 yards. Yep. Right. So, I mean, you're in those history books regardless.
Yep. I agree.
West Coast One actually had a really good point. Says, my dream in softball was just not to strike out. And I'm going to give you, which is funny.
Love Wen. It's the best.
But I'm going to say this. At the very first time I had the opportunity to actually play baseball, and I'm talking against guys, I'll try to make this story short because it's actually quite long, but I'll condense it. The team that we were playing against was filled with all-stars.
Sure.
The guys I played with were filled with all-stars. I was not an all-star. I didn't think I was an all-star. I didn't play like an all-star. As a matter of fact, my very first bat of the season, I struck out. And when I left that mound, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I just struck out. How am I supposed to feel? And I didn't know. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel. But I knew that I wasn't the only person that was ever going to strike out in the history of baseball. And sure enough, Saquon Barkley may strike out at this for himself, but for the better good, for the better cause, for the accumulative reasoning behind why he decided to, well, I'm just going to sit this one out. And he should. He should want to strike out. But in my opinion, the way that this game is going between a Giants team that's absolutely zero to play for other than draft order and the opposite end of the spectrum, he sits out, I'm good with it. I am completely on board with that because he's putting the team first, not himself. And in a team sport, that's what you do.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's not gonna they're gonna sit a lot of starters in this game, and I mean, I'm okay with that. When you are in a situation where playing or not playing doesn't affect where you're seated, what's going to happen, then yeah, absolutely. Like, save your guys, because you don't get, it's not like years past where you had the first and second teams had bye weeks. It's only the number one team. So you got to be ready to go, a week from now. So, I mean, I'm fine with getting some guys some rest, because if it's 1 week, there's not a lot of rust, right? Like, guys are pretty used to having, their bye week, or they play on a Thursday, so they have a 10-day stretch or whatever, right? Like, that 1 week doesn't generally disrupt things. If they were to sit guys and then have the number one, where now you have 2 weeks, I don't love that. Like, those guys should play at least a half, right? Like, get out there, get some reps, keep that game speed up, because
like
2
Kansas
weeks
City,
off,
for example.
Exactly. 2 weeks off can absolutely mess you up. But, if it's just 1 week, yeah, I don't hate that, because, we're week 18. There's a lot of guys that are banged up.
Yeah, no question.
Having that week
I wanted to tell you here with your strikeout story. As you guys know, I coached like 2,500 is the estimate of baseball games at the youth level, ranging from 10 years old all the way up to 18. And when the timing was right, say you're up to bat, Rudy, you're on this, powerhouse USSSA team. We're down East Cobb, Georgia, playing in the Winter Nationals, and you strike out at your first at bat. If I knew the player wasn't going to get completely pissed off the reservation, I would say to him, it's no big deal, because now you're just one more at bat closer to that next home run.
There you go.
I'll tell you a little bit more about that story. And you're right. And to your point, John, you're absolutely right, because we're not always going to strike out. We eventually will hit the ball with the right training, with the right coaching, with the right motion, the hip motion, leg motion. It's almost like hitting a golf ball, because you're using certain mechanics in your body in order to stand there and or swing when the moment's notice arises. Every guy I had played with on that roster were also all-stars. They were all high-end guys who had played since they played T-ball. And I'm talking, like, by the time I was 14, the first time I'd ever joined a collective sports group was that very baseball team. Now, for all intents and purposes, we ended up winning the championship, and it was all kosher and dandy. But I was put in a situation where I was in the outfield. Someone hit me the ball. I never caught an actual in-live baseball, because nobody ever hits to right field. Everybody hits to left field for whatever reason. Predominantly, you don't get any play on the right. But I'm out there. I'm ready to go with every single hit I'm anticipating is going to come my way. It's going to slice like a golf ball off the backside of a 9, right? So I'm standing there, bottom 9, as you stated, Bo, 2 outs. The home run hitter, who's been absolutely fabulous, is up on the plate. And what does he do? He hits the ball. It's a grounder, gets past first baseman. I go for the dig. I get it up, and I chuck it to home plate, because there's a runner on third. You have your wrist, and all of a sudden I threw it at home, and we won the game.
So what was your out pitch? Because mine was a slider. For whatever reason, I could not lay off a slider. It looked like money, and then it would start to dive, and I'm like, no.
Mine was a 3-seamer.
Okay.
So that was my choice. But then, man, just being able to get that ball in, people want to put me on their shoulders and all that. I wasn't hearing of it, I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I wanted everybody else to get to feel what it's like to get the win, to get the W. And we all did. It wasn't just me. I felt accomplished for myself, just from an outfield standpoint, but not from a hitting standpoint. So
yeah, like in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm so glad I didn't, click up an error right there.
Yeah, exactly. Hits over my glove tip, and it's over, and I'm done. Yep. And people.
I was looking for a baseball. I'm not antsy. I was looking for a baseball to show. I used to teach the spike curve to kids, and that does no damage to the elbow, no damage to the shoulder, and it's really a powerful pitch once the kids understand that you throw it hard to make it look like you're throwing a 2-seam fastball, and that got a lot of really good batters out The ball's bouncing on the plate and they're swinging out of their shoes. Anyway, great
Jamie
story.
Moyer made an entire career out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean,
no
Kershaw throws
yeah.
it. There's a lot of pros that throw it. It's not, it's not a sissy pitch by any stretch of imagination.
Well, why I bring up Jamie Moyer is he didn't have any gas, right? Like he was an off-speed pitcher even when it was his fastball.
I'll tell you this too, and then we'll get to the game, so people won't get completely falling asleep here. But I heard a story about Jamie Moyer because he is in the Philadelphia area, and when he was in high school, he had a lot of scouts coming to see him. He was, one of the first of that generation throwing 90-92 legitimately. And there was one day he was having a conversation with his high school coach, and the high school coach got pissed off at him and said, "You got to stop thinking you're going to be a major leaguer because you don't have what it takes to be a major leaguer."
Yep.
As a result, he does a lot of humanitarian work in the Seattle area where he played for the Mariners. He also played for the Phillies. But in that town called Souderton, there is nothing. There's no field named after him. There's nothing. So, I always thought that was kind of so ironic. I mean, a coach is supposed to nurture, right? Not tear down.
Sure, but I mean, that happens to pro athletes a lot. I mean, think of, Jordan when he was in high school. Like, he got cut from his team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those coaches don't always know what they're doing. But, I mean, Moyer was funny because you'd watch him, and usually, like, the upper end of his throws were like
85.
Yeah, it was like mid 80s, right? But it was his command that you couldn't beat, right? Like, he could paint the edge of a plate like nobody else.
Yep. Greg Maddux comes to mind too.
Mm-hmm.
But Sunday night, guys. Sunday night is the big one. The Vikings at Detroit.
Yep. Detroit's
defense is now one of the worst. I'll call it as I see it. Line opened to 3.5. We're now down to 2.5. The total is the highest of any game this season at 55.5. Sounds like we're talking about the SEC now when you have totals like that. Jared Goff, 4,400 yards almost, 36 touchdowns, 10 INTs. Gibbs is having a very good year compared to Barkley. Not so much, but 1,273 yards, 13 touchdowns. And, of course, Jordan Jefferson, the beast that he is, 100 receptions again, 1,479 yards, 10 touchdowns. And Mike Evans, by the way, before I forget, is going to play because he has an incentive for 1,000 yards. And I believe it is 12 consecutive years with 1,000 yards. It's just a mind-blowing number of consistent high-end offensive production. I mean, it's just incredible. But anyway, in this game, this is for the number one seed. Both teams come into it 14-2. Vikings are 6-1 away. Lions are 6-2 at home. I'll turn it over to you first, Rudy. Who do you think is going to win this showdown?
Man, this is crazy. This is by far the marquee NFC matchup of the week. I mean, there is no game bigger than this one. Both of these teams have just absolutely demolished their schedule. They have trounced over so many different teams, and they do it in so many different ways. But one thing is assured, you have one team that's more committed to the ground game and the slot receivers, and while you have another game that relies on the deep ball thrown by Sam Darnold. And you can't get any better than this from at least a quarterback perspective. Unfortunately, Sam Darnold's not in the running for Offensive Player of the Year, not even Comeback Player of the Year, because there was no undying injury that he came back from. But when you look at his stats, when you look at his numbers, when you look at how he's playing, he's just finding guys everywhere because the offensive system has allowed for him, as well as his own educational value from the quarterback position, being able to do everything humanly possible in order to win these games. Detroit, on the other hand, has done it relatively differently. They have a mix between Montgomery, obviously great before he was injured indefinitely. At least there's no thing, I guess there's no such thing as indefinite in the NFL anymore because he's eyeing a comeback maybe in the playoffs as they go on. Kamar Gibbs has been an absolute beast. He's had 100-plus rushing yards in the past two games, a third longest streak by any Lion since Barry Sanders, the great Barry Sanders, since 1998. So it says a lot about how this team will be effective against the Vikings. But this is so contrast to both of the style for these teams. The Lions will score defensive, maybe a special teams touchdown on a run back, maybe a tackle for loss, maybe a forced fumble. It's so tough to fight against a team that doesn't know how to lose. Now, yeah, they've lost a couple of games, don't get me wrong, in the Minnesota Vikings, but the Lions, man, they've been crawling. I've been saying this for years already. Anybody who's listened to my show or other shows, especially this show, the Lions are on the rise, and they continue rising. The cream of the crop rises to the top, and that's where they're headed when both of these teams will square off, with both being 14-2. And the funny thing is, they're wild cards. They're right now currently wild cards. So this says a lot. This, again, that's why it's marquee, because it will set the tone for whoever's going to be second and third and fourth and respective wild card teams along the way. It's so hard to pick against Sam Darnold because he's just played so well. But sometimes the pressure on that O-line from opposing defenses has been kind of an Achilles heel at times. So it's really hard to say Sam Darnold and company is going to basically destroy the Detroit Lions. But don't forget, there's still lingering issues on that defensive line as well as in the secondary for Detroit. So I think Sam Darnold's going to impose his will. Head coach will impose her will. This is going to be closer than it actually seems. And I hate to say this, but I got to go with the Lions with a slight edge here, 7-point swing, and just maybe 5 points on the FPI prediction model. Vikings also have a 12-4 in the ATS, so I'm not. They're going to cover. There's no question. The bigger question is can they win this game? But I don't think they will. I think the Lions will pull the upset here, 31-24.
Good stuff. I think the number one matchup, we think of these teams as offensive juggernauts for the most part. We don't really talk about their rushing offense and defense matchups. And the one that I think is important is the Detroit ground game ranks 9th in 4.6 yards per rush. Rushes per game, they're number 5. That goes largely unnoticed, but they're going against a Minnesota defense that ranks 3rd in the NFL, allowing 3.9, and number 2 with only 22.6 rushing attempts going against them. So, like Rudy said, with Sam, is he going to have to win this game with his arm, and they're going to have to abandon the run right from the start? Do you think that'll be the game plan, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a shootout. Basically, most of the games with Detroit have become that way because of the amount of injuries that are on that defense. That being said, if you're looking at your quarterback matchup, you're looking at Darnold versus Goff. I trust Goff a little bit more. We've seen him in big moments. We've seen him win these games. So this is one where, the line is 3 points. That feels about right. Like, this is going to be a absolute shootout. I do like the Lions at home, but both teams are going to be clawing for this thing because this is the difference between being the 1 seed and the 5 seed. So you either get a bye week and you play at home, or you play wild card weekend on the road. So they have a lot to play for in this game. I expect this to be the over, just because even with a high, point total, nobody's going to be playing a lot of defense. Like, it's going to be a lot of scoring. Going to be an electric game to watch. I do like Detroit at home, though.
Yeah, I agree with the high scoring. The volatility, as I call it, using one of my Wall Street terms from the day. You're gonna have stretches where it's gonna be bang bang. A team scores, then an answer. And that total gets near. It could potentially get near the high 60s during that first half. And if it does, then I'm interested in the under, because I think the second half, then both coaches will want to shorten the game and as much as possible and not get down by more than a score. The team that gets up by 2 scores is probably going to hang on and win. Another important game is those Steelers, Rudy. I feel bad even bringing them up, but they still, as I tell my Pittsburgh Steelers friends and clients, they still have had an awesome season. Okay, it's not really coming down the stretch. It's like a horse that went out too fast out of the gate and now is dying coming down the home stretch. But I still think they are a very dangerous team to be playing in the playoffs. So Cincinnati needs to win. They're favored by 2.5 in this matchup. in Pittsburgh. And weather could be interesting too. There's a couple models I've been looking at that are calling for some significant snow in the Pittsburgh area come Sunday or Monday morning. It's probably good for Cincinnati if this game is taking place at 1:00 with the weather.
So the model right now says at game time, it'll be 28 degrees, foggy with light snow.
And I stand corrected here. I just noticed I said something bad. It's Saturday game, 8:00 at night. So yeah, light snow. That's the beginning of the storm that's approaching. It could dump as much as a foot in the Pittsburgh area. That aside, Rudy, you think Pittsburgh's going to bounce back, or they really don't have anything to gain here, do they? I mean, in terms of seeding, I think they're locked in. Hard game to handicap, in my opinion, but if anybody can, it's you.
There is an outside chance they can win the division still.
Well, there is Baltimore have to lose as a 20-point favorite.
Yes.
Well, there's always a chance. The minute you touch that football field, or you're in this situation, you are certainly a guy who's looking. You're looking for a team and a head coach, and Mike Tomlin looking to get that signature win in a rematch against the Bengals team earlier in the season, where you just smacked the face off of you smacked the stripes off the face of the Bengal, and that's hard to do because, Tigers and Bengals and Lions don't change their stripes. But at the same token, the Bengals are 5-0 on the road this season. And the fact alone that this is such a close game, AFC North opponents in AFC North are tough. It doesn't matter who you're playing, maybe unless you're the Browns. But then you still have to think about the Ravens, who are still in the conversation of getting an AFC North first seed. The Steelers could also be a part of that, but they just need to win. They're not relying on other teams as they have in the past, whether it's a 3-game slide or a 4-game slide or whatever the case might be. You still have a situation where the Steelers can win the AFC North if they win out. If they do not win this game, and the Ravens win the number 1 seed, and that changes the seeding a little bit. The only reason why it does is because the Steelers, they're still locked into a wild card spot, but the question is whether or not they're going to be 5, 6, or 7. And at the wild card position, you have 3 teams that are still chomping at the bit, like the Bengals, who are on the outside looking in right now. So if this game is indicative of what the first round was like, I'm going to take the Steelers here in this sense, only because the communication wasn't there in their last game. Defensively, not able to stop the run. They got trounced all over. But again, they played the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the number 1 seed. They're the contending Super Bowl champion for a reason, even though they're going to start Carson Wentz, and we'll talk about that matchup soon, I believe. And when you look at the Bengals defensive side, Trey Hendrickson will record at least 2 sacks, winning the sack crown and re-entering the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. And of course, you have the proponents of Myles Garrett who say he should win it hands down and blah blah blah. And as far as I'm concerned, TJ Watt was stolen from him last year. So if there's a team that I'm looking to lay the smackdown not once but twice to solidify their playoff position, it's going to be that Steeler defense, and it's going to be a run game. Now they have Jaylen Warren back completely 100%. Am I a truster in Najee Harris getting that ball? Not necessarily. There's a reason why they didn't re-sign him in an additional contract, at a higher value contract, because they didn't re-sign him at all. So I got the Steelers here, but it's close as it always is in the AFC North. Steelers win this 24-21 at home, light snow, -5, 12 degrees, whatever. These Steelers are ready for the rematch, and they're going to take them down as best as they can. But if they can't stop the run, there's not a whole lot they can do. However, there hasn't been a real effective rushing champ anytime soon that's came from Cincinnati, and specifically the Bengals. So I think the Steelers will stop the run. They'll sew up those gaps. They'll play better man coverage. They have Joey Porter Jr. back from injury. He looks good to go. Defensively, they do have some newer pieces. Cole Newcomb is a guy who's going to probably punch you in the mouth if he gets an opportunity to play. So Steelers, close one again, 24-21 at home.
Bo, do you agree with this assessment? I'll tell you one thing. The wind chill is probably going to be closer to 0. The wind with this storm is going to be consistent over the next several days at anywhere from 15 to 30 miles an hour. And I got to think that's going to affect Burrow's ability to throw the football.
Yeah, so there shouldn't be a lot of wind at game time because they're calling for fog. Fog doesn't typically hang out when there's wind. But, the thing is for them to actually win the division is such a small percentage. One, the Ravens have to blow being a favorite by 20.5, which is a ridiculous line. But at the same time, they'd need the Ravens to lose. They'd have to win. They'd also have to have some other help. They'd have to have certain things go their way for them to win this division. So really, the way that they are right now is, are they going to be the 5th or 6th seed? Because they probably aren't going to be the 7th. But they want to be the 5th because then they would be going against the Texans, right? Which of the teams in the playoffs, that's their most favorable wild card matchup. I say that to say this, they may not be playing their starters all day. The Bengals need it just to get in. The Steelers are locked in. So they may be in a scenario where maybe they don't care about this game so much because they can't win the division. They really can't move their seeding that much. So I'll be interested to see those announcements, later today, because, some of these teams early in the week were like, yeah, we're resting guys. And some of them are like, well, we're not sure yet. So I'll be real interested to see if they decide to let Wilson rest and a couple of their key guys, because, similar to the Eagles with Barkley, they have bigger aspirations than this game.
Yeah, and I'm, believe it or not, we're not talking about this game, but I am tempted to put a 5-unit bet, scaling 5 units to 10 units on the Browns. And here's why. Since 1990, there's been 14 games in the NFL, only 14, where the favorite was 20 or more points. Those favorites have gone 4-10 for 29%. So to your point, it seems like a game where the Ravens could have it in hand, right? Up, 35-7 or 35-10, say, and then all of a sudden a backdoor meaningless touchdown, and it doesn't change a thing, but it does change the amount of money in your betting account. I definitely would not bet the Ravens because I don't trust that second half at all, especially if they get out to that lead. I would like the Ravens first half only. But anyway, just a little food for thought and a little history lesson.
I'd keep my money in my pocket for that one because there's no way they're covering a 20.5. Because
I don't think so either.
No.
Because of garbage time touchdowns. Garbage time touchdowns always mess up a line that's that big.
The last time a 20-point favorite was November 1st, 2020. The Chiefs were at home playing the Jets.
I mean, that.
And the Jets did not cover. They lost badly, 35-9. It's kind of crazy. Back in 92, the Bills beat the Colts 38-0 as a 20-point favorite. Those are only a few of the examples where the team won and covered. But well, before we get to the best bet round, I did want to mention the fact that Penn State's in the Final Four. I still have those pizza money tickets that are now not pizza money, but the pizza, the plate, the table, and all 4 chairs coming through the door. So I have tried to think of ways to hedge it, but I think it's futile, to be honest with you. I might as well just ride this thing into the sunset. If I take Notre Dame and hedge it, then I'm basically reducing the potential of the bet on a original pizza money bet. But still, at 40-1 and 28-1, it's kind of fun to be in this situation, to be honest. I think Penn State is actually going to do it, and I know I'm on an island. Notre Dame's a 1.5-point favorite, 46.5 points. That I think is going to start coming down. Both defenses are playing at their best levels of the season, and 2 of the best defenses that we've seen in quite some time. Notre Dame's fault was that they didn't see a defense like Georgia. Well, maybe Georgia didn't see a defense like Notre Dame's all season. So one point with Notre Dame is they're on one hell of a ATS run since losing to Illinois. They've only lost to the spread once. that works against them because now the public is automatically going to bet Notre Dame because of their national popularity. And I can see this line going to 2.5 by next Thursday. But real quick, before we get to the best bets, everybody knows that I like Penn State and have, since about week 4. But I never thought they were going to get to the Final Four either back then. It was more of a value bet that now has turned into something pretty significant. But anyway, Rudy, who do you think is going to make it into the championship game?
That's going to be tough. Either way, you really can't lose because this will mark the first time either African-American head coach will actually win and move on. It's either James Franklin or Marcus Freeman. So it certainly tells you a lot about what these coaches bring to their respective teams. Last night, I seen a smackdown as Notre Dame just rolled all over Georgia in so many different ways. And I don't think that Stockton was ready for this offense, for the defense of Notre Dame. I really just don't think that not only was he not ready, this is his first entrance, as I stated at the very top of the show, to be the starting quarterback in any CFP playoff game. So I don't, this is going to be tough because I like the way Notre Dame is playing, but I love the way Penn State is playing. I mean, and they go to a whiteout and they have the crowd behind them. And I mean, this is not easy for me to pick because they're both so freaking good at so many different positions in all 3 phases of their game. This is tough. Notre Dame.
Wait till next Thursday's show to give us your official best bet.
I think I will, because this is this is crazy. But it's going to be a close one. But I will say this: as both teams go to match up next week, it's going to be a lot closer than I think people believe it's going to be. It's going to be probably 27-24. I'm not even naming a winner or a loser. It's just 27-24. I don't know who that is yet because they're both playing so freaking good. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch. No question about it. It's, they did the right thing with the 12-team playoff format, but I think they have to reseed after the 12 are determined. We didn't.
Yeah.
Obviously, Penn State was a lot better than Boise, et cetera, et cetera. However,
like the bracket style, like this is in basketball.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
Now we have Texas playing in the Cotton Bowl, which if you're new to football, that's actually located in Dallas, Texas. Austin is not that far away from Dallas, and it's almost like a home game. Yet they find themselves a 6-point dog to Ohio State, who really reminded Oregon that they didn't win that game in Eugene, Oregon earlier in the season. And that was just a complete, total beatdown, 34-0 against the number 1 team in the country, who I think is very good. But they got shellacked. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I actually think Texas has a shot here. And, the recency bias here is overwhelming with Ohio State. They lost to Michigan. Ryan Day's going to get fired. He sucks, which is not the truth. I think he's a tremendous coach like James Franklin is. And that's when you're the number 1 guy, you're going to take hits from the media. It comes with the territory. But in this matchup, I think that we're a little bit overvalued with Ohio State now. Not saying they're not good, not saying they couldn't win by double digits. But if I had to make a bet today, it would be Texas. And then my final 2 would be Texas against Penn State. Because I'm not sure if I want James Franklin playing against Ohio State again and losing in the championship game, and then the fan base saying you can't win the big one. Well, you have to get to the big one to lose it. Sometimes the fans don't make any sense to me. But anyway, what do you think, Bo, of your final 2? And does Texas have a fighter's chance?
I'm with you there. I actually kind of like Texas and Penn State to be the final 2. Ohio State, although did beat the brakes off of Oregon, I don't think they're not as good as that film would indicate. At the same time, Texas did have an easier path than Ohio State did. So it's one of the reasons why I think there needs to be reseeding, because again, you have this bracket style way through. but I liked the way that, Penn State took out Boise. Boise, fantastic team. But everything they did seemed to be confusing them. Ohio State did something very similar to the Ducks. The Ducks didn't really seem to have any idea how to attack that defense at all. Probably the best game in the kind of championship range here is going to be that Texas Ohio State game. That's going to be fantastic. I'm not a big believer in this Notre Dame team, but that'll still be a fun game. But that's why I think Penn State walks away with that.
I agree 100%. Georgia is not the Georgia team of the past couple of years.
No, they look terrible.
They really did look rather dysfunctional for a Georgia team under Kirby Smart for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on to the best bets. And next Thursday at 11 a.m., we'll be back to really dive into the college football playoff because the games are on Thursday.
I got to chime in here before we even go there, John. And
okay.
Look, the strength of schedule for Ohio State was not a walk in the park. They're battle tested. They've been on the road. They punched teams in the mouth more often than not. We're talking uppers, we're talking hooks, we're talking straight out jaw-dropping wins. Yeah, they lost a couple, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the lesser of the two evils. And I say that because of Ryan Day, who they mixed it up with Jeremiah Smith having 290 yards, 4 touchdowns in the playoffs, and he's not even scratching the surface of his potential. There's so many different teams who want to count out Ryan Day, and the fact that Oregon did not have an idea how to play. They had all the time in the world. They had the ability to diagnose what the defense looks like, to counteract and counter-adjust, but they didn't. They failed miserably. Yeah, they were number one. Should they have been number one? That remains to be seen, and it's too late for that. But being number one, they didn't play like a number one team. They didn't have any scheme set up in the second half that would make you think they made alterations to what they were going to do, the plan of attack. It just think that Ohio State just looks way too good. I think the chip on the shoulder for Ryan Day is you're right. And to your point, John,
yeah.
The chip is still on his shoulder. Matter of fact, he probably has 2 chips, one on the left and one on the right.
A bag of chips.
That's right.
A bag of chips, a table full of chips, whatever kind of chips, sour cream and onion, whatever works for you.
No, that's why I think that's going to be the best game of the 2 games.
Ohio State's going to trounce all over them. Because, look, Texas barely squeaked out the win. They squeaked out the win. This wasn't a convincing win. This wasn't a dominating win. This wasn't a Notre Dame win versus Georgia. This is we won, great. I'm not a fan of Sarkisian. I'm not a fan of the fact that he made the wrong decisions. It's going to be a good game. Don't get me wrong. I take nothing away from him because all those kids deserve to be there. But in regards to Sarkisian and how tough their schedule was, you even said it yourself, Bo, that they had a relatively easier path to get here. And it showed. It showed in their play. It showed in their mentality and approach to the game they played yesterday. So Ohio State's just going to walk all over them. I just don't believe that Texas has these strengths that Ohio State has. I just don't see it. I just don't. And Ohio State, I'm not even an Ohio State homer. I just watched both games in their entirety, and the way and what I seen and how they won, it's not going to be close. I'll be honest with you. I just don't believe Ohio State's going to walk out with their tail between their legs against the Texas team that barely squeaked out a win.
So if you're watching the show, the main takeaway is keep your money in your pocket for this game because we definitely don't.
Good point. Good point.
Yep. Well, if it Ohio State Penn State, I pray for a tie somehow because then both coaches won't be abused by the media for losing the big one.
It's really a shame. It's all said and done. I'm just saying.
Anyway, my show best bet. I'll go first, and then we'll go Rudy, and then Bo. Bo has his show coming up at 11 o'clock, so I will be quick. Make sure you tune into that show as well. It's a very, very good show. My best bet here is going to be on the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL, and he's also the best coach in Week 18 or Week 17 before we expanded the season. He's 9-3 in these situations, and a lot of these situations obviously didn't involve Mahomes playing. So I think 10 points is way too many points to give a creative genius like Andy Reid the chance to have Carson Wentz turn back the clock to 2011 when he was on the verge of winning an MVP before getting hurt. But anyway, Chiefs are backed by this system. Bet on a team that won and covered their previous game by double digits. In that win, they had twice as many penalty yards as their opponent. If that system there went 54-31 for 64%. If the opponent has a 50% or better win percentage, which Denver does, these teams, being Kansas City, improved to 32-15 for 68%. If the opponent is the favorite in this game, they have gone a terrible 3-15 straight up and against the spread. There you go. I'm taking the Chiefs plus the 10 as our show best bet. We are 3-0 last week. We're hitting 67.4% for the season. I don't know of another show that has ever done that and been so transparent with our results. You can watch every show and know that that's what we bet. Rudy, what is your best bet for the show?
You know, there are so many teams on the slate, and I'm talking meaningless games, right? But if there was a team that could force a possible upset here, I got to take the Jets at 4-12. Yeah, there isn't a whole lot, and the rumor mill's running around with, Aaron Rodgers being his last year. Well, last year should have been his last year, not this year being his last year. I think that the Dolphins, they have a lot to play for. I just don't trust a team who can't play in cold weather. It's proven. It's already showed that Tua Tagovailoa is not the guy who can play in cold weather climate games. And they're in New York for this one, who's also expecting snow. So bottom line, Dolphins do not get the win. They are upsetted by a once dominant defense. Maybe Sauce Gardner will make an appearance. We don't know. But I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to say that the Jets will go for the upset. That's my best bet for the show.
Love it. And Rex Ryan will be the next coach, maybe.
Hey, that would be hilarious.
And then maybe Santa Claus will be proven to actually exist.
Hey, I would love to have Rex and then have Rodgers stay, because that sideline chemistry would be an absolute dumpster fire.
Yep, no question. Yep, that would be potential for a 2-14 season.
Hey, but put it on Hard Knocks. Let's watch all of that.
I would love to see that one. But you guys should really check out the AFC North Hard Knocks.
So we got 2 dogs so far. Are you going to make it a third one, Bo?
I am. I'm going to go with the Panthers to cover against Atlanta.
Wow.
Atlanta does have an outside shot to, still sneak into the playoffs. They are a game behind Tampa, and I don't think they're going to get there. But the Panthers have played some inspired football the last few weeks. And even in losses, they've been trying to win, right? Like, there's no give up on that team, which I credit that team a lot for, because, man, they have played terrible all season. It is bad brand of football. But over the last 4 weeks, they have really come to play. And Atlanta, just for whatever reason, can't seem to get out of their own way. So I do think Atlanta wins, but that 8.5 points, I think the Panthers cover.
Well, for a pizza money side bet for the show, I think doing the money line on all 3 of our dogs, just in case in a round robin parlay, do $5. If all 3 of those hit, that's going to buy a lot of pizzas.
Right?
That's for anchovies if you like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why not? That's what makes this fun. And with that said, I'm going to let Bo get to his show here, folks. At 11 a.m., he starts his show, so just transition right over to that one. On behalf of Rudy Reyes and Bo and myself, remember, bet with your head, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.